What's up, y'all? It's Mark with Evry K9. Today's video is going to be all about the standard poodle. Sherry Stone from Doorway Standard Hunting Poodle came through and we had a great conversation. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one, so I'll see you guys in the comments.
Actually, 1999 is when I bought my first poodle to hunt with, but I had had a couple of standard poodles prior to that. My ex-husband now, but my husband at that time, we hunted, and he didn't want to get a dog because he didn't want a shedding dog, and so that's how I came up with the poodles. I knew that they hunted. I'd worked for several vets and knew that's what they did.
So you just knew that you wanted to go back to that breed for hunting?
Right. I was raised with Brittany's, working cattle dogs. Well, we called them blue heelers, but now they call them Australian cattle dogs.
Okay.
So, and then I had some stray dogs, border collie, Doberman pincer, you know. So I had several breeds as I was, growing up, and I trained horses, jumping horses, barrel horses. So I actually had a world champion quarter horse. So
You still into the horses?
No, I wished I was.
Oh, you miss them?
I haven't done them in a while. Yeah, I miss them a lot. I did the Mustang Million, which was a thing I did about 10 years ago, and I hadn't been on a horse at that time in about 10 years, where you get a wild Mustang, and you have so many days to train it, and then you have a competition.
Oh, that's
And the prize was $1 million. Unfortunately, I didn't win it.
That's crazy.
Anyhow,
that's
it was
crazy prize.
I started as mainly dove hunting, because duck hunting's too early in the morning. You have to wade through a bunch of water.
Okay.
I wasn't really down for that.
Yeah.
But the dogs they are originally duck dogs. That's what they do, is duck hunt. But I did a lot of dove hunting, which the nice thing about dove hunting is that you can talk, walk around, and that kind of stuff. Ducks, you have to sit very quiet. Other thing, in Texas, Louisiana, you have to worry about alligators.
Okay.
So I've actually been on duck hunts where you shoot the ducks are down and you wait until everybody gets through shooting before you send the dogs to get them.
Yeah.
And the ducks aren't there.
You done fed the gators.
Or a turtle.
Yeah.
So you have to worry about alligators. So I'm not real thrilled about tromping through all that kind of stuff, but I do like to upland hunt, upland is pheasant and quail, birds that fly up from the ground, any kind of ground bird. They're not migratory. Doves are migratory, so are ducks. So in AKC, they have two events for that. They have Springer, which is the upland hunting, birds on the ground, and then they have the retriever, which is birds that fly overhead.
Okay.
So
you pretty much got them for working ability?
I got them for hunting. That was the main reason.
So it wasn't pet?
They were not good. Well, but they were pets. I wanted them to be able to live in the house with me and not shed and do all that kind of stuff. But I wanted a dog that I could take out and hunt and is a great companion and do a lot of things with. And the shedding too. My ex-husband didn't want anything that shed. So, which is a great thing, but you still have to groom them. And I could groom them, so that wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
So
they shed, right? As far as I know, they shed, but just very little.
They do shed, but it's not like, usually they shed, their own hair will catch it. You know, that's the reason why you kind of have to groom them. If they shed, they may make mats. But they don't really shed like a shedding thing.
Oh, okay.
It's like, you can't really, pull their hair out. Like, this was a lab, and I grabbed and pulled his hair like that.
You'll get something on your hand,
so just a little bit on there. So they shed kind of like people do.
What was living with them like? Because you got them for working ability, right?
Right, but they also had to be house dogs. So I wanted them to be able to be in the house, sit. And they're great. They're protective of your house. But when somebody comes in and they know it's okay, my guys are trained to be okay. I have people over all the time, and I introduce them one at a time, though. I don't let them introduce all the dogs at once.
If you don't say it's okay, how they act?
They might be a little suspicious, but I have a couple of dogs that wouldn't care.
Okay, guys. So some of them more nice than the other ones.
They've been to so many dog shows and so many hunt tests and all that kind of stuff. They're just used to, a dog show, and that's what a lot of people don't think about. They think, oh, dog shows, that's nothing. Look, your dog, every time it walks in a ring, has a complete stranger that's going to walk up and touch it, and it has to stand there perfectly still for it. So there's not a...
They got to be real social for that.
That's a lot of training for that. Well, they have to be social, antisocial at the same time, because they can't say hi to the judge. They have to stand there with
like neutral.
Yeah. It has to be like neutral. Dog shows are a lot of training, and with poodles, it's a lot of work. This is not show code here. When you're getting a show dog ready, it's 2 days, and it's 4 to 5 hours every time you work on them.
Sheesh.
And that's what you're going to do every 2 weeks, 4 to 5 hours.
I ain't never really thought about that.
Oh, it's brutal.
You get a poodle and you want to breed and you really want to take it serious,
If you,
you
want to
better
go
be
do
ready.
show conformation and that kind of stuff, that's the reason why most people send them to handlers. But I'm an amateur owner handler. I do all my own training and everything for everything. In the hunting world, I'm considered a professional because I've taken money to train hunting dogs. But in the conformation, I'm considered an amateur because I've never taken money to show them.
Oh, okay, got you. Like you've never been a handler for somebody else.
No,
so
I've done
they
it for
consider you
free.
as a
Right, I've
yeah.
done it for free, but they've never paid me for it.
Got you.
And that's what makes the difference.
So now you've been into them for, you said 25 years.
About 25 years.
When did you start wanting to breed them?
I got the male dog, and I really wasn't considering breeding. That wasn't it. But then a little bit later, I got my Ray, which is my original dog, took up with my ex-husband so well because he was always feeding him treats and all that kind of stuff. I said, well, I'm going to get a girl.
Okay.
So I bought a girl,
Yeah.
and then after that, I thought, well, I got involved in the PCA, which is the Poodle Club of America. I got involved with them, and I started learning about breed standards, and I already had a pretty good working background of how the dogs should look from the horses.
Okay.
Because most dog standards really have been done by the horses. It started out with horses, all the working dogs.
I didn't know that. You taught me something.
Shoulder angles and all that kind of stuff. Of course, as breeds evolved, you know what I mean, different breeds have different studs. But a lot of the working dogs or the cattle dogs and all that kind of stuff, they kind of look like a horse if you stood them up next to them. Doberman.
So you got the female and then
I got the female.
you already knew you was going to breed when you got that female?
Kinda, I always was thinking about it, but then I found out all the stuff you have to do. You have to do, you know, hips, and back then there wasn't as much stuff to do. But you still had to do hips and eyes and a lot of stuff to be able to have a breeding dog. So I did all that on them, and they were good. But I also, since I was not doing conformation at that time, I wanted to put hunting titles on them. And so I went to the National up there. It was in Maryland, 2-day drive. I went to Maryland 14 years with 2-day drive to go to the Nationals. And the first year I went, they failed the hunt test, which they were already titled in AKC, and
crying,
that was
huh?
a lower level test.
Yeah.
So pretty upset about that. So then I came back the next year, and they passed. And then I decided I wanted to become a member of PCA, and it took me about 7 years to become a member.
Why so long?
Because you have to prove that you're a breeder. If you have to be a breeder, and you have to be a breeder of merit, and you have to do your testing, and you have to make sure that dogs, you know, you're breeding the right thing for the breed.
So they real strict.
Very strict. They're probably one of the strictest.
7 years?
7 years.
By that time, people won't even be breeding no more.
Right,
They don't even want to be in the dogs no more. They done.
But I did get in, and I was one of the few people that ever got in without having a show champion. Now, I had hunting title dogs. But the other thing, too, is that I came in and I was the founder or the author of the medallion program that we had for about, 12 or 15 years at PCA and Poodle Club to try to get more people to hunt poodles.
Okay.
And so I'm telling you, PCA really
Trying to
stepped
bring
up.
back the history, you know.
The original history of it. And a woman by the name of Annie Clark, who is internationally famous, she's passed away now, but she's the one who had decided to try to bring that in. And that's when she introduced us trying to show the dogs in this dog's haircut, where it's a cut down hair without all the hair.
Yeah.
That way they could still do events and show.
How did that go? Like when you started trying to bring the poodle back, like the history back, did people take to that or?
You know, a lot of people did. I mean, obviously now if you go on, there's all kinds of hunting poodle stuff now, you know what I mean, on the deal, and on YouTube and Facebook and all that. But every now and then you'd run into somebody that would get the hunt tester stuff that was an old timer that wasn't too great about it.
Do you take them out? Do you socialize them a lot?
I do. I go like to Home Depot, Bass Pro Shop, because those are air-conditioned places here in Texas you can go into.
Yeah.
Academy. You can take them into Academy.
When you go there, how do the people respond to you?
Everybody wants to pet them.
Okay.
You know,
Everybody.
they all, oh, it's a poodle.
But we don't
I've never
see
seen
poodles
a
that
full
much.
Poodle. Right,
Yeah.
right. And the dog I have in show coat right now, everybody wants to see him because he's got a lot of hair and he's a blonde color. He's really a pretty color. He's not quite apricot, it's kind of a cream color. And everybody wants to see him. So it's like when I go out, they're very popular.
Yeah.
I kind of hate to go with my friends that don't have a poodle because those
Don't
dogs
get no love.
don't get the attention.
They don't get no
the
love.
poodle does.
Yeah.
It's like pretty sad. But they say, oh, I've never seen a real poodle. And I'm like, Yeah, well, they're out there. You just gotta
Yeah.
see them.
Sometimes I see them, but I see they're not like a solid coat. I feel
Right.
like I see the
The
spotted
more the spotted,
ones. Yeah.
and that's the other thing. There is kind of a separation in that. I breed solids, but there are poodles come in all colors. I mean, they come in black and white, brown and white. They come in what Doberman color, which is like phantom. Is what they call that. Baron is actually not black. He's a blue, and Queenie is. She's not a pure white, but she is a creamy white. If you see her, you think she's white till you put her up to a really true.
And you
white.
say he's blue because of that undertone
Right,
that we
because he
see
has
on
that
him?
smoky color. And that's not because of his age. And he is going to be 13 in December. But that's not because of his age. That's because this is blue.
So if he bred, he's spitting out most likely
Okay,
blackish or
no.
what is he throwing?
So this is his daughter.
Oh, this is his daughter.
So he carries a cream gene.
Okay.
And he carries a black gene. And on that black gene, the way genetics work, is blue and silver. You see a silver dog, that's a black dog.
Yeah.
It just has a thing that attaches to that gene and makes it black. So I know it's super complicated. But he also carries a recessive gene for this color, for the cream white, and the mother did too.
That's what I was just about to ask. If he carries that gene, you got to go find a female that has
to get
that
this
same
color, it has to have that. And there
Yes.
are such colors as black dominant. Now his daughter, this dog's grandmother was black dominant. So she had nothing but black puppies. But I bred her grandmother to a dog that was white, that carried this gene. So every puppy carried that gene. So when I bred her daughter to him, it produced her.
So you kind of, in each litter, you can kind of figure out what you want to bring to the table
Right.
for that litter, and you
Right. And there are
match
and there are rules. I won't go into that, but there are rules that you don't do with colors.
Okay.
So, because there's pigment that you have to consider, which is a different part of that. So, breeding is not just everybody goes, "Oh, I want to breed," and I'm like, "Okay, do you know how much time and
They
effort?"
gonna get your pencil
and
and your
then
paper.
when you get that litter, when you're whelping that litter, are you going to know when to actually go get a C-section and not get a C-section? It's like you have to. You do progesterone testing to make sure that when the time is to breed, we don't just breed.
Yeah.
And it's very, very complicated.
You almost need a mentor.
You do.
You need a mentor. You don't
do.
need to just go get some
Right.
dogs and just.
Right. You need somebody that's going to help you along the way. And that's the reason why I'm a member of the Poodle Club here in Houston, Blue Bonnet Poodle Club. It's a good place if you think you want to be a breeder or if you think you even want to be a competitor. Those are good places to go to. Blue Bonnet Poodle Club of Houston and then Poodle Club of America. They're in Missouri now. They used to be up in Maryland, but we have our nationals in Missouri. And it's just great to go there. You get to meet all kinds of dog people. Some of them are a little bit rude and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
It's like anything else in the world.
Yeah.
It's like going to high school.
Dog people be tripping
dogs.
sometimes.
Yeah.
What type of person do you think would do well with a poodle?
You're a person that has to be a leader, really. I mean, each bloodline has different things that they
Like traits.
And my dogs are pretty driven and they're highly intelligent. The more intelligent the dog, the more of a leader you have to be, or they'll run everything in the household. And so I think you need to be a leader. You have to be able to discipline, but not be cruel about it. You have to be able to be fair. So if that's a no today, it has to be a no tomorrow.
Okay.
For them.
Just consistency.
Consistency. They'll outsmart you. They're the second smartest breed on the planet. Border
What's the
Collie.
first?
Border
Oh,
Collie.
okay. Okay.
Border Collie. It's Border Collie, definitely. If you've ever had and if you live with a Border Collie, you probably won't ever live with another one. And I've had Border Collies. They're great dogs, but you need a farm, you need a job, you need something for them to get up every day and do. And poodles chill well usually after about 2 years old. They're pretty chill. They can chill out. But they also need something to do.
Everybody breeds for something different, right? Every breeding program
Right.
is not the same.
Right.
What are some things that you breed towards?
I breed for drive, for one
Okay.
thing. Well, other health is the first issue of everything. Health. You always breed for health. So sometimes some of your better dogs may get left out if their health just isn't, if they don't pass all the testing. So, and then the next thing, I want a dog that has drive. So I have my puppies, I want to throw a ball, and if that puppy goes and gets the ball and plays with it and all that kind of stuff, that's a puppy that I would keep or I would want to sell for somebody maybe to hunt or do any kind of events. The puppy that's not quite as interested in it would be a puppy that might be a better pet puppy.
So that's not going to be a part of the breeding program.
Right. Well, it could be.
Not for a working person.
Right. Not for a working person, but you have to kind of make those decisions too. Like you can get overdriven at some point, so you just want to be careful about where you go. Breeding is never easy. This girl here, she doesn't have the best conformation. She has good points on her,
Yeah.
but she doesn't have the best conformation. Her mother really didn't have great conformation either, but she has two sisters that are champions, and she's produced a champion too.
Yeah.
You can't, we call it throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
You just gonna make me pet you, huh?
Yeah, and it depends on what traits you're looking for. I mean, you can't always just breed one time and get it. I mean, because there's so many genes, they're just kind of thrown out in there in a litter of 10. You don't know who's got what.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something else about a poodle, too, is that, and maybe with other breeds, too, that puppy I get that's not quite as driven in the beginning can turn out being a driven puppy at 6 to 8 months old.
Yeah.
Depending on the environment.
Sometimes they drive a build.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on the environment. You know, they just kind of turn on. And I know honey dogs do that.
When you said conformation, I know some people don't really know what that means. So can you
that's
break
the
that
structure
down?
of each breed has its own criteria for conformation and structure.
Okay.
Not that they always stick with it, but it is the beginning of what they want in the dog. That's how you make what you call a breed standard. So you try to breed to the breed standard, and there's never going to be a dog perfect to that standard. For me, in my bloodline, there's certain things that I look for that I want in my bloodline that somebody else that's showing their dogs may not want. In mine, I want a really good front, the front end of the dogs. And I'm not so strict on the tail set. Poodles are supposed to have a fairly high tail set. My tail sets sometimes aren't quite. The tail set's high, but the croup's not. So you have to kind of pick and choose the things you want in your bloodline. Because there's never going to be perfect. You try to breed to that perfect dog, but even if you find the dog that might be the dog that you need to bring that extra trait, there may be something else about him that you don't want to sacrifice.
Got you.
So you have to learn to decide what you're willing to sacrifice to have this or that.
Yeah, and maybe on the next breeding you can bring it in.
Right, you can change it down on the next. So let's talk about conformation a little bit on the dog. All right, this is the prosternum. See how this kind of pokes out? You need to have a good prosternum. That tells you that there's a good angle to the ulna bone. That's this bone that goes back to the elbow, which you need to have that to have good balance. You want this bone and her shoulder blade to be in the same spot, which she is. Now, they talk about a 45-degree angle on a shoulder, and there's really 45-degree, they say is really kind of impossible. But this is her angle right here. That's where her shoulder is, right here. You want him to have a nice long neck, not too long though. But you want it to have enough length on it that she has the appearance of elegance, okay? Then to have good rib spring. So you want that rounded feel in the rib when you come around on the rib. When you come back on the top line, you want a good flat top line up to her neck. Stand. You want a good flat top line. Now, each breeder has what they breed for particularly. I don't breed for a super high tail set. Lots of times breeders' tail sets will be right up here. I kind of have a working dog, so that tail set's not as important to me as the front end and the rib spring and the stifle. This is the stifle. Stifle needs to be nice and thick because that's what controls the hind end from wobbling. Stand. You also want it to come back and have a nice curve to it. You want this from the hock to the floor to be straight. You don't want it to be set like that. See how you set with that angle like that? You don't want it to be that way. You want it to be, that's called cow hock or sickle hocked. So you want that nice curve straight down. And you want it to be, her toe shouldn't be too, this is called the shelf. Her toe should be right at the shelf when you run your hand, she doesn't know what that is. When you run your hand down her leg like that, you want it to go right down to the toe. It can be a little bit farther back, that's okay. About an inch is okay too. But you don't want it to be way back here. Because when a dog's stacked with it way back there, that means that it's probably sickle hocked. And if they stacked it correctly, it would be stacked, you know, the hock would be incorrect. So you want it to be like that. I'm going to do a stack, and this is for a poodle. Not all breeds stack like poodles. So I'm going to do a stack for a poodle. And when I stack my dogs, the first thing I do is I do the front. I set this leg front because that's the judge. You're the judge. So I set that foot, and lots of times this foot's already set. I usually run my hand down my dog's back, and then I run it down its leg like this, and I slide that back. I don't pick it up. And then I come over to this side, and I slide and back it up. And then I come up and I bring her tail up, and I straighten her up, and that's how I usually stack them. If you want to practice stacking your dog, the reason why I do that is she knows that the front feet are going to be first. I do the same thing every time. So when we get in the ring, when I start doing that, she knows exactly what's coming next. So it's stack this one, make sure that one's correct, run your hand down, slide this one back. You slide it. This is the judge's side. You always stack it first. And then you come over, rotate your hand, then take them right here is where you get them, right there at the bend of the knee, and you stack that back, and then I run my whole hand up her, and then so she's a little crooked with her head. So now I'm going to have to straighten her out, and I push her over just a little bit. And there you go. So you just want to make sure that the hock, that you stack it here, stack it, get them even. You want to step back and look at your dog and make sure everything's even, that she hasn't changed any of her footage. She's leaning just a little bit forward, so I'm going to push her forward like that, see? Push her just a little bit forward, and that's how your dogs stack.
So it's really like a project,
Yeah.
a little bit.
It's like a, yeah.
Like a
it's
science project.
It's like building a building in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's like building something in a lot of ways. And so it's just like her she has two sisters that are champions. And actually she has more. She has 3/4. She has quite a few siblings that are champions. But she was not one of them, but she produces champions, and she's really great in the field and all that kind of stuff. Let's say that these dogs aren't related. I've bred this dog to that dog. 50% of this dog goes into puppy, 50% of this dog goes into the puppy. That's just the way it is, 50-50, okay? But also in that, there's another 50-50 up here, which is the grandparents, okay? So those grandparents are 25% of what this puppy is,
Okay,
on each
yeah.
side. So then you have to look back at that too, and kind of consider, okay, so what was there, because you're going to get some of that too.
You just never know
You don't
how much
know.
is going to go to each
Right.
puppy, though.
Right, and you try to evaluate at 8 weeks, and sometimes that evaluation works and sometimes it doesn't.
How many poodles do you have?
Right now I have 8.
You have 8 poodles. How many females?
I have 4 females.
So 4 females, 4 males.
But of the males, a couple of those dogs or 2 of the dogs are dogs I'm not going to keep.
So you got 2 of them that's going to stick around. You got 4
A
females
little bit, and
that
I'll
stick
find
around.
the right home for them, and then they'll go to that.
So would you say they're more working dogs, or you say they're more pet dogs, or they're kind of like medium drive dogs, or?
Right now, what I have, they're all pretty driven.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean they still chill out in the house, and they're still good in the house. But one of them's a pup, and so he's always pretty wound up. And the other's a 2-year-old dog. He just wants to go do things all the time. He's good at going and doing stuff too. So my dogs, they all lay down and chill out in the house. You know, I have 2 intact males that live in my house, and neither one of them marked.
So when you're out in public, anybody ever think that they're a doodle?
They're
thinking like a golden doodle, labradoodle?
To do that, to say that they're a doodle, and I usually correct them. I'll tell you kind of a really funny thing. A co-breeder of mine, she had her dog out at like PetSmart or one of those places, and they go, "Oh, it's a doodle." Now this dog is a grand champion, which is above a champion in the show ring. Okay,
That's a disrespect.
And he has all other kind of titles too, Fast
Yeah.
Cat, all these kind of other titles games that they play with the dogs. And this girl goes, "Oh, that's a pretty doodle," and she goes, "It's not a doodle." And she goes, "Oh no, that's a doodle." The lady argues with her as to whether or not, she goes, "No, this is a full-blood poodle." So it's kind of funny that you get those arguments, you know. And of course, being a purebred breeder, we're not really into the doodle stuff. But the poodle, a lot of people have never met the poodle. And I think that's the problem, that they think they see the dog at Westminster, all that hair and all that kind of stuff, and they think, oh my gosh, you know. But now the poodles, the last 20 years, a lot of the poodles have gone into the field, and there's getting to be more and more. You get on Facebook, there's a whole
Getting
list
more
of
into the
poodles
work.
for field work, right?
So most of, I would say a lot of poodle breeders, they don't like the doodles. They're really not into them.
No, that's a crossbreed, and so it's like, it's a crossbreed, and we're into purebred, and we don't want to diminish the ability of the poodle by crossbreeding it with something else.
Yeah. Well, it's still never going to be considered a poodle.
No, it's never going to be.
It can never take that name,
No.
even if people mix it with a husky.
Right,
You know.
and they mix them with a lot of stuff, and some of those dogs, they don't do testing. And my thing is if you're going to buy a dog of any kind, the people who are breeding the dogs need to do all the testing, and you need to go on Orthopedic Foundation for Animals, OFA, and it will tell you what each breed needs. So a lot of times when you cross-breed dogs and you haven't done all the testing and that kind of stuff, the second generation can carry like maybe 4 or 5 extra diseases it didn't carry as a golden or as a poodle.
Yeah. I
So-
train a good amount of doodles, you
right.
know. What I can say about them is they normally really super wild. in the beginning, but they
Right.
all
Then
take to the training real
Right.
good. Like,
Calm
I don't know how they creating any level of consistency with them.
Right.
Now, I have heard of some doodles that's really stupid,
Right.
you know,
Right.
but
Right.
a lot of them that I've been getting have been real. They actually
Well,
been
you
good,
can get
you know.
stupid poodles too. It's all about your breeding. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like you can get dogs that are not very bright, but it's just with a crossbreed you just don't know. And with
Yeah.
the poodles, you know, with a purebred poodle, you really know what you're going to get. And usually, if you go to a breeder that does testing, you can go visit the dogs at their house as puppies and all that kind of stuff. That's the main thing you want to be able. Now, at my house, sometimes you can see the male and the female, but not always, because lots of times the male may be living, you know, because we do artificial insemination. So he
Yeah.
could be, you know, up in Canada almost. Lots of times you don't get to see the male, but there should be registration on the male. You should be able to look him up and see what testing he's done. It should all be public knowledge on their testing.
What site do you go to look for the?
OFA is one of them, and I think Embark also does some posting on testing and
For the
that
health
kind of
testing.
stuff. Right, but OFA is the standard.
So what's the difference between the standard poodle, the miniature poodle, and the toy poodle?
Well, other than size, but I will tell you, standard poodles are anything from 15 inches up. A miniature poodles are 10 inches up to 15 inches, and a toy poodle is anything under 10 inches. She is about 24 inches tall. Sometimes the miniatures go over a little, but in the show ring, if you have a judge that wicks them, that's wicking them to see what their height is, they'll be disqualified from the show for that day.
Okay.
So not all judges do that. So, but personality-wise, there's quite a bit of difference. Miniatures and toys were crossbred with terriers to get them down smaller. The miniature was. The British, wanted to have a dog to hunt truffles with, and because the poodle had such a great nose.
What is truffles?
Truffles are a mushroom that's very expensive, and if you go to try to buy truffles, just look it up on the internet. They're highly expensive. And the British, they're growing in all of Europe and in the U.S. Wooded areas, they grow on dead wood. They're a fungus.
Okay.
Okay. So they decided that they used pigs to hunt these with, and the pigs would destroy a lot of it. So they decided they wanted to breed a dog that could hunt them. And since the poodles had such a great nose, they didn't shed, they bred them down with the terriers to get a dog they could carry easily into the woods, set it down, and let it hunt for truffles.
Lolo's skills are about to be put to the test.
Tell me if you find something, Lo.
This time, she finally hits the jackpot.
Oh, wow, you did find it. Good girl. Good girl. The best way to tell where a truffle is, because they're so hard to see, is if the dog touches it. Oh, yeah? You show me again?
Lolo is trained to touch the truffle, but not pick it up.
Good girl.
She's rewarded with pieces of chicken.
So you would say the miniature is more drivey?
Miniature
'Cause it has a terrier in
is
it.
a lot different from, yes, they're quicker, they're into stuff more. I mean, and they're gonna, if you have a rat in your house, they're gonna chase it down probably, because they're into all that kind of stuff, because of the terrier that's in it. Now, you can't DNA them and find terrier in them anymore, because it's so long ago.
Okay.
But they do have a lot of terrier personalities, and a lot of people will say, as people get older, oh, why don't you just get a miniature? And they're like, well, because they're not exactly the same personality as the standard. You know, they're like, and I do have a friend that's in San Antonio, Texas, that has Simply Southern Retrievers. She actually hunts with her miniature poodles. They pick up geese and everything.
Do the miniature ones shed more?
No.
Or the toy, do they shed more?
It's all the same. Just
Okay.
like this. None of them really shed. They do lose hair from time to time, but they don't shed.
So that's the main difference,
That is-
basically, is
yes.
that terrier's been introduced into
Terrier's
the
been- right.
the miniature and the toy.
And the toy. Actually, the toy was just the miniature bred down. I'm sure that they added a few other things in there with it over time.
Mm-hmm.
But that was all done in Europe. So when they all came across the water, they were already kind of set. Now, and Europe has different rules and scales than the U.S. does. So the U.S. sizes are different. They have things called teacups and I think giant dogs, but that really is not in the U.S. If you're a breeder of poodles, that's really not something. That's kind of like just a fancy pet thing that people do, because there's really no such thing as a teacup poodle. It's just a small toy.
How many puppies will you sell at one time to a family?
I'll sell one puppy.
Just one?
With just one. If you sell two puppies to somebody, then the puppies play with each other the whole time. The person doesn't have individual time to train that one dog and bond with it. And so I know a lot of breeders, like if they can sell you 2 or 3, they'll do it, but they're not breeders I know. All the
Okay.
breeders I know will tell you, I'll sell you 1 puppy, come back in a year, and I'll sell you another puppy. You can't just start sacrificing the family and the dogs. You'll end up with dogs back. The dogs are ill-behaved. I mean, that's just not ethical to sell 2 puppies to 1 person.
You're going to get, what is it called? Littermate syndrome.
Right.
Littermate
Exactly.
syndrome.
Littermate syndrome. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And at about 8 to 9 weeks, even if you're a breeder and you have puppies left over, you separate them. We start keeping them away from each other, and they get to come together to play or do some training, but they're not living with each other the whole time.
What's the earliest that you're going to let them go to their
8
family?
weeks is the earliest. And, you know, each litter can be different. You can have a breeder that says, look, this litter just hasn't matured as quickly. And sometimes we wish we could let them go at 7 weeks, but if you're an AKC breeder, it's a law you can only let them go every 8 weeks, and you need to check with your state. Some states tell you you can't do it, but at a certain age, 8 weeks.
So whenever you let your puppies go, like, would you deworm them first? What's normal for you?
So I'm a limited vaccination person. I do vaccinate them before they go home. They could be like right at 8 weeks, their first vaccine.
Okay.
From me. I do recommend that you don't, you know, you try to keep them safe enough, the world, but I recommend that you don't really vaccinate them again until they're about 10 to 12 weeks old.
Okay.
And then sometimes they may not need another vaccine. But I know some people get weird about it, and their vets tell them this and that, and that's a whole nother conversation about vaccination.
Within itself,
right?
yeah.
But I'm a limited vaccinator, and there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of studies to prove why you need to limit your vaccine. If you're a person that's vaccinated a lot and you've had sick dogs, go on the internet and look it up.
I hope you guys got a lot of good information today. I think she really dropped a lot of jewels on us, and we definitely appreciate her coming out and chatting with us today.
And I had a great time. It was great. The dogs had a great time. And, oh, you ate some grass? So she may throw up here for us with some grass. But, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Anytime.